Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I want to welcome everybody to the Resident and Family Support Council. As many of you know, we have these meetings on the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month at 3 o'clock, and it's always the same link to get in. So know that you could just click on the same link each time and you'll be able to get into these meetings. And you can also find that link on the Illinois Department of Aging's Ombudsman page website under the Resident and Family Support Council. You can be able to access the link there as well. A couple of things I just want to talk about and share with everybody before we go into today's topic, which is really talking about advocating for yourself. And I'm going to lead that conversation today, and I'm hoping that other people will also like to kind of share their stories and what's worked and what hasn't worked for them. One thing I do want to let people know is that we do always send a reminder out the day of the event for these meetings. And there were some issues with Constant Contact, which is our mechanism to send those reminders out. So those did not go out today. So I'm anticipating our attendance not to be as much today, because I think those reminders are really helpful for everybody the day of the event to be able to just click on that. So I'm hoping that those people that wanted to attend navigate their way here. And also always knowing that we can view these on the YouTube page for the Ombudsman, the Illinois Ombudsman. We have a YouTube page where all these meetings are also recorded and put onto that site as well. So now you can always access that. Just a couple of more things. I wanted to thank the Illinois Pioneer Coalition, who provides their Zoom account for us. Thank you to them for allowing us to use their Zoom account so that we can host these meetings. And then also I wanted to make sure that everybody put their zip code into the chat box, as well as if you're attending with more than one person, just put how many people are attending these. We do know that some facilities are gathering residents together to attend these meetings. So if you could just let us know how many people are attending in the chat, that would be fantastic. And then also one new thing that we're going to start doing. We are going to start at the end of the meetings when we stop recording. We're going to ask people if they would like to share any of their own personal advocacy stories or any issues that are just burning issues for them that they really want to discuss and actually get shared more at large. What we would do with these is we will take these empowerment opportunities, and we're going to save those recordings. And then when we're given a chance to be able to show those either to legislators to help for an advocacy issue, or if we need to be able to tell the story better, we're going to be able to share your voice directly. And I'll be putting a slide up at the very end that kind of just gives a little guidance on that. So do think about it. If you don't want to do it today, you can do it another time. It can either be on the topic that we're talking about or something else that's really important to you. And what we'll just do is we'll end this recording and I'll start another recording just with your own personal story. And then we'll stop that recording, and then I'll just save that separately, and it will not go out on the YouTube channel. It will go into our own private files to be able to use at a future date. So today our topic is talking about, we're talking about being able to advocate for yourself. So if you could just give me a second to be able to put up on the screen. Here we go. And we just have a little bit of a PowerPoint here just to guide us in this conversation. So navigating your own advocacy when you live in a long-term care facility. This is what the ombudsman do, right? The ombudsman help advocate, but we can't be everywhere all the time. And so we really want to make sure that people understand that you don't just need the ombudsman to be able to advocate for what you want. Your voice should be listened to. And just as these meetings are all about talking about being empowered and how we can really try to encourage people to be more empowered, that's what this conversation is about today, is encouraging all of us to be able to be more empowered for ourselves. For when you cannot, the ombudsman isn't there to be able to advocate for you, or just be able to do it on your own, because you don't need someone else to speak for you. You can be empowered to be able to do it on your own. So really, what does advocacy mean? And how can you be self-empowered to do it on your own? So, as an ombudsman, we advocate really by educating people on their rights, educating people on the different options that can happen when presented with a problem. We'll talk through options that might be available for you to help kind of process what it might be that you're looking for. We'll discuss in that same breath all those possible outcomes that can exist and able to get over that complaint or that issue that you're having. And we also encourage residents to do something about it on their own, to be able to advocate for their own wishes and their own concerns. So that's what we want to talk about now, is how can you really be that that advocate? And so we're really talking about self-advocacy and what self-advocacy means. And self-advocacy is really just speaking up for yourself, and really getting the things and having things that are important to you, being able to have those needs met that are important to you. That's really what self-advocacy is all about. And every person, not only in the United States citizens, should have this ability to be able to do this, but when you live in a long-term care facility, this is something that's really important, is for you to be able to speak up for what it is that you want. But we also recognize that sometimes people are afraid to do this. There's a fear of that retaliation. I know I've shared in the past a story in my own life, my mother, with my stepfather. He lived in a long-term care facility, and he always had ice cream every night before he went to bed when he lived at home. That was just kind of his evening ritual that he had. And when he moved into the long-term care facility, I really wanted to advocate for him to be able to continue to get that, because that was something that just kind of made for him to have that good ending to a day. But my mother didn't want me to say anything because she was afraid that they would take it out on Tony. And that's that fear of retaliation. I tried to talk to her about it, but my mother was very much against it because she was just really afraid that they'd take it out on him. And we've talked about retaliation in the past. We have one of our YouTube videos that discusses all about this fear of retaliation. If you're feeling like you can't speak up because you might have something bad that happened to you, this is when it's really important to be able to reach out to the ombudsman, because something's wrong. You should not be afraid to speak up for yourself. I can't imagine how it would feel to live in your house, your place that you live, which is the long-term care facility, that's your home, and not be able to speak up for what it is that you want with that fear of retaliation. So if you're feeling this way, I strongly want to encourage you to reach out to your long-term care ombudsman. And I know that Stephen, who is so great at putting all of those links into the chat, I know he did that. He's put that in there at the beginning of this meeting. So know that you can reach out to your ombudsman for that. Another thing that we hear a lot of times from residents is they don't want to bother staff. They really like their staff and they're so busy, especially during the pandemic. The CNAs have been so busy. There's not that many of them. They're short staffed. So I don't want to bother people with what it is that I want. Well, it's okay to bother people because it's not a bother. It's your self-need. You deserve to have that. And it's not something that if you can build it into the routine. For example, let's just say that it's too cold in your room and you're freezing and you really, really want your room to be warmer, but you don't want to bother anybody because you see that they're running around all the time. You should be able to live in a temperature that's comfortable for you. And so you should be able to speak up for that. And that's part of what staff are there for. They're being paid to take care of you, all the staff that work in that facility. So it's not a bother to them. It's their responsibility to take care of the needs that you have. So eliminate that from your mind. Whenever you think, I don't want to bother somebody, they're busy. Don't think like that. It's their responsibility and their job to do that. Another thing that can keep people from really being self-empowered with their own advocacy is not knowing who to go to. I don't know who to go to. I have this issue and I don't know who to go to. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be talking about the roles to kind of help clarify that a little bit for who it is that you can go to have the actions help the best for you. And that can be really, really important. I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. And then the other is not knowing how to bring your concerns forward. How do I do it? Do I go verbally? Is it something they want written down? Is it something where, I need to call somebody? I don't know how to do this. No one's ever explained this to me. I came into this facility a month ago and nobody ever told me how I bring a concern forward. So one of the things that I would suggest is that you even get from the facility. They have a policy on complaints. Get that complaint policy from them. And sometimes it will be a form as well attached to that, but that doesn't mean that for everything you have to fill out a complaint form. But for something that may be a little bit deeper, like you want a different staff member caring for you, something along those lines, then you may want to document that on that concern form as well. And if they do use a form and you complete that form, I would encourage you to ask for a copy of that, not just hand it in, but to also get a copy for yourself. And to make sure that you date that so that you can start a written record. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about that, what that self-advocacy can really take a look at.
Lee, can I jump in right there a second?
Absolutely, Carrie. I saw you turn your camera on, so I thought you had something important to say.
When Lee talks about keeping copies, even if you just go to your director of nursing, your executive director, even if you just go talk to somebody, make yourself a note, who you talked to, what the date was, who was present. The more documentation you keep, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, then if a problem arises, you can go back and say, well, on this date, I went to this nurse. On this date, I went to the executive director. If you can't have some documentation to track your movement, it hasn't happened. At some point, Lee will introduce Bruce, and Bruce can tell you documentation is part of how he's gotten to where he is in life right now. And that's because I probably drove him crazy with that statement.
But it is true. And that's so much of the work that even we do as ombudsman is we document. And we take this documentation. It helps to be able to organize what's happened, who we've spoken to, what responses have been, and as well as to have that, for lack of a better word, that proof that these interactions and these engagements happen. So that's really important, Carrie. So thank you for that. That's really important. So listed that you can see right now on your screen, for those of you who have joined us with video, you'll see that we have up there the different staff roles in the facilities and to kind of help guide you. And the reason why we decided to do this as well with this presentation is because we've realized that through having some conversation with people is we don't know who to go to. You don't always know who to go to with a concern. And if you bring the concern to the wrong person, nothing might happen with that because people may forget about it because they're not the ones who do it. And they'd be like, yeah, I'll tell somebody, but they might even not know who to tell, or they just forget about it. So when you bring it to the people who are most responsible for it, that can be most helpful. So we're just going to kind of go through this list. And I'm going to briefly explain what everybody's what roles are. And please, if you've got a question about any of this, please make sure, go ahead. And I can't see everybody's hands if you raised your hands, but you could go ahead and just unmute yourself and ask that question. So the first one is the administrator. That's a typical title you may hear. You may hear executive director at an assisted living, or a manager, or a director, something along those lines, the administrator. The administrator is the person that's responsible for the entire building. And the administrator has to take a test. They have administrator's license. They have to pass that test, and they have to maintain continuing education every year in order to be able to uphold that license that they have. So with that facility that they are administrator of, their license is on the line for everything that happens in that building. So they're the person, if you really just do not know who to go to, because the responsibility for everything basically lies on their shoulders. But we do know that many times it can be difficult to get a hold of the administrator. Sometimes the administrator is not in the building that often, or sometimes the administrator is just this person that's in meetings all the time, and so you can't get a hold of them. So let's talk about the rest of the people on this list as well. The director of nursing. which is also referred to as the DON. So you'll hear that word as well. That's the director of nursing. The director of nursing is the person that's responsible for the entire nursing department. That includes the nurses as well as the nurses' aides. And their different buildings dole out their responsibilities in different ways, but ultimately the director of nursing, she's either usually an RN or she could be an LPN. But that person is responsible for the entire nursing program. So as I spoke about with the administrator, the director of nursing, her nursing license lays on the line for all the care issues that are happening in that facility. So again, this is the person to go to with care needs because she is the person who's responsible for the entire facility. And now, as I spoke about the two of them, part of the language that you can use when you're advocating for yourself is to say, I know that you as a director of nursing is the person in this building who has your license on the line. And because of that, I want to make you fully aware that this is what I need in regards to my care. So could you please make it happen? Because I understand it's your license that is overseeing this entire facility. So sometimes the power of language can work very well for us. A charge nurse, you may hear that term. The charge nurse would be the nurse that's responsible for, and it can be done in different ways. Sometimes it's for a particular floor, or sometimes it might be for a building in its entirety when that DON, that director of nursing, is not there. And many times you'll hear this referred to more in the evening times when the director of nursing isn't around as much. The administrator and the director of nursing, typically, they hold more of those 9 to 5 job hours, although they should be in the building more than that because this is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week industry. So they should be around more than that. But when the director of nursing isn't around, the charge nurse is the next person in line to make sure that the care issues are being addressed. And when it comes to advocacy, the charge nurse, you could speak to her, but sometimes she is not the person unless it's that immediate need when the director of nursing isn't there. Sometimes their hands are tied because they have to say, I have to go to the DON about this anyway. So if you hear that, then go to the DON yourself as well to make sure that that charge nurse did that. The certified nursing assistant. The certified nursing assistant, which is also referred to as the CNA, they're the person who rocks it, right? They're the ones who do the direct care on that day-to-day basis. We need these nurses' aides, and we need them to do their job well. They actually operate underneath the license of the nurse that they are working with, that they have been assigned to. So they are a certified nursing assistant, and they need to go to school in order to receive that nursing assistant certification. And there's different programs throughout the state, and there's different, it's not as standardized as you would like to think, because there's a variety of different abilities to be able to get that certified nursing assistant, that certification. But all the programs do require hands-on care that they have to provide in order to become that certified nursing assistant. Like I said, they're the ones that provide that primary care on the day-to-day. Also, one of the things I want to encourage all of you to advocate for is one of those things that we do as ombudsman is we try to give ideas on how that you can get some of your care needs met. You might want to advocate for having that same nursing assistant care for you all the time. And what that means, when that nursing assistant is working, they're the ones that care for you. That's a very person-centered approach. And in the long run, it works out so much better for the individual, for the resident, as well as for the nurse's aide, because everyone starts to develop a relationship with each other, and expectations on how that care is going to be provided and received really do start jiving together very, very well. And that relationship is one of the most important relationships as you live in long-term care. So that's something that you may want to look at if you're finding that you're getting a lot of care needs and care issues that are not being addressed. Advocate that you can have that person care for you all the time. The same nurse's assistant care for you all the time. The MDS coordinator and the care plan coordinator. Many times they might be two different people, but sometimes they're also one person. So what MDS is actually another acronym that you find in our long-term care world, which is the minimum data set. And that's the big assessment that gets done on everybody on when you first come into the building. And then it gets reviewed every quarter. And then it gets reviewed again every year. Or it also gets reviewed whenever a significant change happens with you. So that MDS coordinator, that minimum data set, they're really the lead of the assessment team. That's who they are. And because they are leading the assessments, many times you also find that they're also the care plan coordinator. And it makes sense because they just organized and led the assessments on all of this, and they had to verify all the assessments. And so it's a very strong place to have them also be that care plan coordinator because they've been doing the work to find out who you are. So it makes sense for them to be that care plan coordinator for you as well. We have done sessions on what a care plan meeting should look like. There's actually been 2 different sessions that we did. I want to encourage you, if you've got questions about care plans, that you look at those on our YouTube channel as well. Carrie, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, so just for everyone's, just in case that there are people here from other facility types, assisted living, supportive living, they don't have the MDS coordinator. They're not required the quarterly care plan meetings. If you're in the ICF world, they're not required quarterly care plans. They're required yearly ISPs. So those major things really, they are just for skilled nursing.
Thank you for that reminder, Carrie. Yes, and if you look at the Illinois Department of Aging's website, the Ombudsman page, we actually, with one of the care plan topics, we actually have a sheet there that you can click on that will help explain a little bit more about what the care plan meeting and what service plans, care plans, like Carrie said, the individual service plan that can exist for different level care facilities. And it so kind of helps with that, will help with that. And it is important that you do know the language because that only conveys to the facility when you're looking for self-advocacy that you know what you're talking about. So I want to encourage you, assisted living, their service plans, like Carrie said, the developmentally disabled care facilities, those are those are called individual service plans. And then in the nursing home world, they're called care plans. Social services. So what is social services and what do they do? Social services actually, that role can evolve and change depending on different facilities. They're really there to be able to look at any of the community discharge sort of things, any service needs that you may have, any family dynamic stuff that they should be looking at. They're there to look at those social service needs that you have, resources to be able to make sure that your care needs are your psychosocial and care needs are being addressed. So that's what they do, but many facilities, they've also migrated more towards this admissions and discharge person as well in the social service office. And so that as a admission person, they're helping to go through and make sure that people are proper for the admission. And then for discharge, I really feel that social services should be highly involved in that process when you're looking at leaving the facility. They should be involved in making sure that you're getting all your care coordinated as you're going home. Also assist with other things and making sure even any service deliveries that you want. One of the things that I advocate for social services doing is to take a look and see how is the individual going to get groceries. Should they look at a grocery service delivery being sent to their house? How is the person going to get their meals? Should we sign them up for meals, a Meal on Wheel program? Those sorts of things as well, not just to look at making sure that people are getting the equipment that they need, but also making sure that their social service needs collectively are being addressed as well upon discharge. The activities director. The activities director is that person who looks at engagement and how you spend your day. And so it's called, you might also hear it referred to as life enrichment director in some facilities. And so that role should not just be around programs and engaging in programs all day long. It should also be around what you want to do when you are not wanting to go to programs. Not everybody is a group person, and not everybody wants to go to programs all the time. This should be that resource person to get you materials and supplies so you can engage in the leisure time that you want to engage in that might not be group oriented even. It could be that person that gives you crossword puzzles, decks of cards, or helping you to figure it out. You're bored and you don't know what you want, but you want to do something more. You can have that conversation with that person to help plan out what that should look like. You don't have to be dependent on your family to be the one to bring you in magazines and books and cards and crossword puzzle books and things like that. They should also be able to help you right there. The activities director, that's part of what their role is to take a look collectively, not just programmatically. The activities director may also be the person to plan outings and to go on to community events as well. So if that's not happening in your facility, or it is happening and you want to go, make sure you speak up. If it's not happening, then talk to the activities director about that and see what can happen. How can we get the opportunity to be able to go out into the community? You should have that opportunity to be able to do that. Now I want to talk about the dietary manager and also the dietary consultant. So the dietary manager, you might also hear them referred to as the food service director. They're the ones responsible for all dietary type needs. And this person does have to pass a course as well. They have to take a course and they have to get certified as a dietary manager. And they have to continue to take continuing education for this. They have to make sure that they understand all those issues, food-related issues, to make sure that we're having healthy, safe eating environments in our facilities. The dietary consultant, that's added to the screen as well, because they're the person, every building must have a dietary consultant that works with them. They're the ones who assist in making sure that those menus are planned and they're planned properly, and that they entail all the food groups, that the quantities are being served in the proper sizes, that your nutritional needs are being met. And to have a conversation with the dietary consultant, if you have dietary concerns, can really be helpful. Many times people don't even meet the dietary consultant, but they have to be there. They're not there on a daily basis. It depends on the size of the facility, but you can make appointments to meet with that individual as well to talk about the dietary concerns that you may have, because this person is a certified dietitian. A dietary manager in a facility may not be that person. So that's a very different education type that you're looking at. Therapist. Most facilities now have a therapy department. Many facilities, this is a contract service. So they're not employees of the facilities directly. Some facilities they are, but many facilities they aren't. So if you go to an administrator about a therapy need, they may not have that connectivity as readily to the therapy department directly. The therapy department, typically, if they are a contract out practice, there is a supervisor over that therapy department. So you should find out who that individual is. This is a really important need for many people who are going for short-term stay. Therapy is integral to you being able to go home and rehab well. The therapies that you will see in facilities are physical therapists. Physical therapists, they look at that walking and that ability to be able to continue to have that functional ability. That's what they look at. They'll look at more of the range of motion and those types of things, making sure that we're continuing to be able to move. If you've had a stroke, or even as we get older and you have things that are happening in your body, to be able to continue to be able to live a good, healthy physical life. Then you have speech therapists. Speech therapists, they'll work on things, not only we think speech, helping us be able to articulate and talk, but they also look at things like swallowing. And many times it comes from the speech therapist, that recommendation for different diets that we may need to go on, because they do swallowing evals. That's really important in long-term care. That's a big role that the speech therapist provides, is that the diet that you'll be prescribed based upon a speech pathologist's engagement with you. So if you're
I'm going to
looking
jump in right there, Lee.
Yep.
Sorry.
Nope.
So yes, a speech therapist will tell you what you can and can't, or what you should or shouldn't. Let me rephrase that. It should be what you should or shouldn't. Every resident has the right to refuse that.
And we'll be talking about that. Yep.
Okay. It's just, because there are times they'll say, well, we want you on a soft diet. And that isn't what you want. You want your pork chops and your French fries and your potato chips. And that's what you're going to eat. And they need to write it in your care plan that you've been advised of what your diet should be, but that you're refusing to follow it and you're going to eat what you want. But, that is where we go back and forth from what their job is to what your right is.
Exactly. Well said, Carrie. And then the last one I just want to talk about in the therapy department is the occupational therapist. And the occupational therapist really works more on those ADL skills, the activities of daily living skills, and those sorts of things. So many times in the therapy department, you may even see a makeshift kitchen. You may see a bed. They'll work on transferring, going in and out of bed, going in and out of your wheelchair. And those sorts of activities of daily living, even going to bathing, working on range, even to make sure that you can do your bathing, those types of things. So what you'll find many times is that the therapists will work in conjunction with each other to be able to have your holistic body needs met so that you can continue to do well in your rehab experience. The laundry supervisor. So the laundry supervisor, that's pretty much what they do, is they oversee that laundry service collectively as a whole. So they're the person who is making sure that your clothes get cleaned, that they get returned to you, and that they're cleaned well. That's their responsibility. Housekeeping supervisor, same thing. That individual that's making sure that you live in a clean place, that's what they're responsible for. And all the staff that do that daily cleaning, the housekeeping supervisor is responsible for those individuals. Maintenance supervisor, again, fairly self-explanatory, but just to make that difference between a housekeeping supervisor and a maintenance supervisor. The maintenance supervisor would be that person to look at more the things that need to be fixed in a building. So if you're having, your sink needs to be fixed. Even a light bulb, sometimes it will be the maintenance supervisors because they're the ones who have the light bulbs. The housekeeping staff don't have that stuff. It depends on the facility, but I've seen that play out in many buildings. So a housekeeper can't, because they don't have access to the supply cabinet. It's a maintenance, they're in the maintenance supply cabinet, those light bulbs. And so they're the ones that deal with those issues of it could be even broken beds, broken equipment, things like that. Many times a maintenance supervisor will oversee that. The business office manager. The business office manager is typically those people that oversee anything finance, all those financial stuff, the billing, all of those issues along there. And many times what you do is you don't have a lot of contact with that business office manager until you need to have it, and then you have no relationship with them. So I really want to encourage people to make sure that you continue that relationship with this business office manager, that you're fluid with them, particularly if you're a person who gets worried about your finances. Because I know we've all been, when we live at home, we know pretty much what we have financially, but then you go to a long-term care facility and there's a lot of questions around that. So have conversations with the business office manager to find that information out so you can feel in control of that and not feel unempowered with your finances. The admissions coordinator. Many times this is a person that you meet upon admissions and you don't really see them after that. But this is that person that explains all the services that are in the facility. They have you sign all of that original paperwork. And that's who that person does. And sometimes this person may also lie in the social services department, like I talked about previously. Sometimes they kind of take on this dual role. And then the medical director. The medical director is a doctor, and he has a signed contract with the facility. And his responsibility actually is for all the physicians that go to that building. So he's responsible for all of them. So if something needs to, if there's a policy change or anything like that, that medical director should be consulted on that. And then he make sure that the other doctors that work in that facility know about that. With that being said, do remember that you have the right to your own, be able to choose your own physician. And if that's going to happen, then that physician would also be in communication with the medical director, because they don't act independent. That medical director does oversee all of those medical services. And knowing that you have that right to your own physician, that is something that you can strongly advocate for, but there are some things that go along with that. And one of the things that can go along with that is your own physician may not choose to come to the facility, which would mean you'd need to go for the office visits. And then you may be responsible for having to get to those office visits, or to pay for a car to be able to take you to those office visits. So do understand that as well. And then any other, there's a pharmacy consultants that work. There's a lot of other, you might find a lot of different staff that are consulting staff that work with the facility. And then of course, there's a lot of the direct care staff. Like I said, you've got people in that kitchen that might serve meals. So you might have meal servers, housekeepers, and things like that. Does anyone have any questions about any of those roles before I move on to the next?
So I have a comment. Every staff in a nursing home, unless they are brand new, should be able to at least point you in the right direction. Whether or not they can actually help you with the problem is going to depend on their expertise, but they should be able to point you in the right direction and let the laundry supervisor know of whatever issue you're having, or wherever the issue is. It's a CNA talking to the laundry supervisor. In my mental scenario that I didn't tell anyone about. But another thing that a little quick story I have to share. So a few years ago, I had a resident who was having problems where she was having some sort of, she thought it was an allergic reaction to the soap that they were using to clean her clothes. And so she wanted her clothes to be rinsed a second time. Well, I talked to the laundry supervisor, and the laundry supervisor, who was over like laundry and housekeeping and maintenance, so she had a few different hats, talked to her, and she said, well, it's all automatic. We can't change the program. We have to just run the program, and that's it. Well, then I talked to one of the laundry staff, the person who's actually using the washing machine. And he said, oh, program 6. And so when you are advocating for yourself, it's, sometimes you don't get an answer, or you get a, we can't do that at the supervisor level. Go and talk to the people on the bottom who are actually doing the work to see if it's possible. Now, that's not going to work if it's like a regulatory issue, but if you've got things like what I just said, where the supervisor didn't know exactly how the washing machines were programmed, but the person on the floor who's actually using them did, those instances, you might actually get some results. So that was my little story.
And that's really important that you said that, because some of these examples about how self-advocacy can really play out, that leads us right to that. So one of the things that I find is that you see the CNA as a resident. I see the CNA a lot, and I might have that laundry issue. So I ask a CNA about it, and the CNA says, well, I'll talk to somebody in laundry about it. So they talk to somebody in laundry about it, and then they get back to you, and they would say, using your example, Stephen, they said they can't do anything about it. It's an automatic program. Well, now as that resident, I don't know who they talk to, because they talk to somebody in laundry. And I'm talking to a CNA who is just taking someone else's word for it, because they don't do the laundry, so they don't know. So many times the CNA is the one who fields a lot of these questions, and they may actually go and try to find the answer for you, but they don't know who to go to succinctly as well. And then if they bring back the answer to you, you feel like now you're just stuck in the land of limbo. Whereas if you go to the horse's mouth directly, and that's that purpose, go to the horse's mouth directly, like Stephen said, and then you can see about how you can get that need met for you better. There was actually an ombudsman that I went out with not too long ago, and she created a sheet with all those roles, that I just showed on the screen, and with a blank line next to it. So it was very easy. And she encouraged this individual who wanted to do some self-advocacy to go around and find the names of all of these people, because the staff also turn over. And the ombudsman himself didn't know the names of all of these people. And I thought, what a cool idea. So that is something that I want to encourage people to do, is to write these lists down, take a screenshot of this, email me. I'll put my email address in there. I will give you all of these roles, and write them all down and find out who in your building are these people, so that you can go to the right people to get your needs met. One of these hints that we want to really give you, like Carrie touched on, is to make sure you document your interactions. Get a notebook. If you don't have access to getting a notebook, ask the activity department, could you get me a notebook and I'll pay you $1 to go to the dollar store for me. Get me a notebook. I would like a notebook. And they should be able to do that for you. And with that dollar notebook, it might be the best thing you ever did, because that is where you can start documenting the stuff like Carrie said.
And that might be a good place for you to let Bruce kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in as soon as.
Yeah.
And then other thing is the emails, is you really want to make sure the emails, you want to make sure that you can, even if you met with the administrator and you talked about the issue, you can follow up with an email if you're a person who has access to a phone, iPad, or a computer. And we have Bruce. Bruce, do you want to unmute yourself? And I don't know if you want to go on camera or not. It's up to you. But if you want to unmute yourself, Bruce is actually somebody who lived in a long-term care facility, who strongly advocated for himself. He rocked it, and he doesn't live in a long-term care facility after some battles. But so Bruce just wants to share a little bit of his story. We asked him to do that. Bruce, could you do that for us?
Yeah, I can share a little of my story. I was in a nursing home almost 4 years, and it was pretty rough. And then I think in 2020, I found all these great people from Illinois Caregivers for Compromise and everything. And they taught me how to advocate. Through listening to them, they taught me how to advocate for myself. And so I started advocating for myself in the nursing home and keeping a lot of notes of what went on, things that happened, like the administrator not letting me go outside. There was a lot of terrible things, okay? And so I started advocating for myself probably 2 years ago to get out of the nursing home. And it took a lot of work, a lot of advocating, a lot of stress. The most important thing I think I did was take notes and learn and read about everything, listen to all these Zoom meetings. I was doing Zoom meetings almost 8 hours a day. If not, no, a little bit less. They helped me quite a bit. Most important thing is document. Like they just said on here, keep your documentation. Don't let anybody push you around, and live your life. Don't settle for less. It's a nursing home, but you only live there, okay? They can't life. Don't let them run your life. They will try. Don't let them do it. I'm
Bruce,
sorry.
tell them where you're at now.
I'm in my own apartment. I'm in a senior independent living facility. I'm a quadriplegic, and I have some great, really nice caregivers in the evening time to help me out getting in and out of bed. During the day, I go out and do what I want, when I want. And it's so nice to be able to just go and not have to tell people where you're going, not have to come back at a certain time, not have to answer to a doctor, okay, who actually gets on the nursing home side and says, you can't go anywhere, okay? Don't let these people push you around. And that's the biggest thing I have to come across. It's your life. Get out of your bed and live it. That's the biggest thing I saw at the nursing home when I was there. People don't live their life. You're not dead, okay? And I refused to give up. So I never gave up. And when the state and everybody else was giving me a hard time, I just persevered and kept charging at it, didn't stop, and I'm out. Broke
And
the
Bruce,
chain.
it's fantastic, that what you were able to accomplish. And like you said, it really was, it took a lot of stick-to-itiveness. I think that's a message we're hearing. And also, I think what happens to so many people when they move into a long-term care facility is it's an institution, right? I mean, no matter how much anybody tries to tell us it's home, it's an institution. And many people start taking on behaviors, institutional behaviors. And one of the institutional behavior is compliance. So we start complying with everything that's going on around us instead of asking questions. Why is it like this? Why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this. I want my life to look like this. And to start really advocating for yourself and being assertive, being confident, and being comfortable. And you had resources that it sounds like you had some people in the beginning that helped give you that push, but your personality then did it all. Your personality is what?
Use the
Intuitiveness.
Ombudsman, the state resources. That's the biggest thing that'll help you do whatever you want, okay? Yes, don't conform, ask questions, okay? Ask a lot of questions. You have the same rights in the nursing home as you do outside. Don't let anybody tell you different, okay? You're allowed to come and go. You're allowed to live your life. You don't have to stay in bed all day.
And that's what people are missing, guys. There's so many people who think, okay, I went to the nursing home, my life is over. It's not. Bruce is evident of this. I mean, when I started this all with Illinois Caregivers for Compromise early on, I kept telling people my only reward would be that I could actually get to hug Bruce at some point and not be in the nursing home. And I managed that last month. And it was like the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life was finally getting to meet him. But, my son has been where he's at almost 10 years. And we still live life to the fullest. He still goes to concerts. He still gets his tattoos. We're going to be in North Carolina next week because my dad passed away, and we've made arrangements with a nonprofit that is bringing me a beach wheelchair so we can take him to the beach and the chair floats. We live life to the fullest, and that's what it's about. And the facilities, if they're doing it right, if they're providing resident-centered care, they can do this. My son's facility, they go out of their way to help us make sure that the residents live their life. I mean, we have another resident in the building, same age as my son. One of the staff members took her last week for another tattoo. It's about letting them all live their lives. And, they want to say, ooh, you're on Medicaid. No, you're on Medicaid. No, sorry, it's still my life. You don't own me. The state doesn't own me. For those that are in the meeting that are, in the industry, whether you're an ombudsman, you're a CNA, it doesn't matter. Lee and I both are on the board of the Illinois Pioneer Coalition. We have a summit coming up in 2 weeks. There's still plenty of availability. I'll actually put the information in the chat. It's all going to be, all we discuss is, resident centered. What is the right thing for the resident? And at this point, we're all having to rebuild that. So this will focus on how do you rebuild together to make sure we're making things better for everybody.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes. And Bruce, thank you for sharing your story, because I do feel that this is the most important message that we can share today through this meeting and also through the work that we continuously all try to do is that you have rights. And just because you live in a long-term care facility doesn't mean that you've relinquished any of those. And if you want something, don't comply to what's happening. Do what it is that you want. And I think that that's a really, really important message, Bruce. You guys, both you and Carrie, Bruce, you living in the community now is just an amazing, amazing thing. We think about it often. Kelly, the state ombudsman, talks about how cool it is that you got what it is that you wanted. You never gave up. So, know that there were many cheering behind you, trying to do what we could, but none of it would have happened if you did not advocate as well for yourself. Other people sitting back and advocating can help, but doing self-advocacy only pushes it even more.
One thing I want to mention is when I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. Yeah, you got to advocate. That's the most important thing that you can do for yourself. And like they said, when you get a nursing home, your life doesn't end. I saw a whole bunch of people, their life, was over, and it's not over. And I encourage them to get out, but they're like, no, I'm going to stay here. I mean, if you're not happy there, get out.
Bruce, when you were told no by somebody, when you were told, like, I remember going out of the facility, no, you can't go. How did you deal with that?
I got hold of the Ombudsman group, and they helped me. That's another thing. When a nursing home administrator or anybody tells you something, make sure you have your knowledge cap on about what they tell you. I went in front of 6 or 7 of the nursing home administrators, director of nursing, doctor, and everybody, and they chewed me out one day. Told me they're not going to let me go anywhere after November of, November 2020 or 2021. I wasn't allowed to go out anywhere. And I got hold of the Ombudsman group and my ombudsman, and she talked to him, and I got hold of some other people, and I got rid of my doctor, got a new doctor, and he approved everything.
Oh, so that was, and you stuck to it. You weren't afraid to be in front of anybody.
I got a new doctor. He approved everything, and that helped me get out even better.
Fantastic.
They wanted me out because I was very independent, and I was basically a pain in their butt. Okay.
And the thing is being a pain in the butt that's how you might have felt that they were describing you, but you weren't. All you were doing was really advocating for what you wanted. And any of them would have done the same thing if it was them.
And if it's a good doctor, they should be advocating for you.
Exactly.
I mean, we were at my son's diabetes doctor 2 weeks ago, and we're having some issues with his blood sugars crashing. And she said to me, I think we're better off just putting him on a regular diet and get rid of that word diabetes, so people will stop being so paranoid because he's not eating enough. So it's those kind of things. I want to make sure. So Bernadine asked a question early on, and I don't have a clue how we answer that. So I want you guys to look at. She said, what should be done when items are requested during a care plan meeting are not included in the care plan, despite following up with emails?
So Bernadine, I could tell you what I would answer is you could always remember, you can always reach out to IDPH, and you can tell them I've asked for this stuff to be in. Here is my email copies. I would bring it to the ombudsman as well. And you have proof that on this date, I asked for this to be added and they did not do it. And that is a regulation.
Yep.
That is part of the regs, is that what people want in their care plan, they have to be part of that process, and they're allowed to contribute to that care plan. It's your directions for your life. So so that's a course of action, as well as talk to the ombudsman, because you can work on it on 2 levels, the advocacy level as well as a regulatory level.
Yep.
And I think sometimes we just try to do it one way and we don't get the results we want. So then we kind of just toss it out. but you try to see whatever levels you can work on this as. And simultaneously, I'd also bring it to the administrator and said, this is what I said on this date. It's not here.
Well,
So,
and I would not bring it in person. I would email it. I asked on this date and I don't see it in the care plan. We had another question. And I see there's a new message that's popped up on mine, but I haven't scrolled down to it. But first, before we get to any more questions, Lee, we're at the top of the hour. Could you give a plug for our next meeting?
oh, absolutely. Our next meeting is August 9th. I got the date right? August 9th, and we're going to be doing a conversation about being self-empowered with your dietary choices. And actually, I've been working on the presenter for that topic. And I believe that we have a speech pathologist who's going to be talking, because one of the things that speech pathologists can do, I believe there was a dietary question was there a dietary question?
Yes, that's our next question. It's, is the facility obligated to adhere to individual dietary needs of residents? What if they don't?
Yes.
Yes, they are. All individual dietary needs must be adhered to, and it's a violation if they don't. Want to start documenting it. Like Bruce said, that's what works the best to be able to try to make that change happen. Again, you could do it through an email. I'm not sure the specifics around this. It can always be more helpful with specifics, but sometimes it's not that it could be the speech pathologist that prescribed a certain diet for somebody. For example, like you may have been put on a puree diet post-stroke, but you've done a lot of rehab and you don't need that puree diet anymore, but an eval hasn't been done in 3 years. So you're still on a puree diet. And a new eval should be done because you may have been able to be upgraded to be able to have, even mechanical soft or even if they just a regular diet. But just because you prescribed a diet doesn't mean you need to adhere to that diet either. It's up to you. People can make what we refer to in the ombudsman world is what some people say are bad choices. But we all have the right to do whatever it is that we want to do. We can put into our mouth what we want to put into our mouth. It's up to us what we want to do, understanding the risks that you may be taking. That's part of what you have to understand. But if you want to be on a regular diet and you're supposed to be on a mechanical soft diet, which just means that it's kind of already, chewed up for you, and you don't want to do that, it's up to you, but understand your risks.
We had another question. Are the financials of the facility public? Is there somewhere we can look it up? So I'm going to put a link in the chat for medical provider cost reports.
Oh, great.
That's from HFS, and that's going to lay out some of the the broad expenses that a facility has. It's not going to lay out any specific details, like what specifically the administrator is paid, or what a certain CNA makes. It's going to lump, here's our administrative costs, here's our aides, but that is the about the most information you can find on the financials. Every nursing home in the state is listed if you click through to the long-term care facilities.
Yes, and that I'm glad you were sharing that link because my brain went to the same thing. So yeah, it's a great thing to be able to look at because you'll be able to see, just like Stephen said, it's more clustered. Like you'll see what the whole activity department, what their expenditure is, not what they're budgeted, what they're budgeted for staffing. It doesn't talk about materials and all that stuff, just the staffing issues. So those sorts of things can be really helpful to be able to just get a general idea.
One thing that is really valuable, tripped over my words there. One thing that is really valuable about that, and the ombudsman in Chicago, Bernard Cobbins, he reminded me of this a few weeks ago, is that form will actually tell you what entities they're related to. So you can see if you're being recommended to be moved to another facility, you can see if that other facility is a sister facility or not.
Mhm.
A lot of times your sister facilities will have similar names or similar logos, but not always. And this form will tell you if they have a financial relationship, which may or may not be important to you, but could be.
Yes, it can, because especially if you don't like the place you were at and you don't want to go to another one of those affiliated homes, it can help. Or if you really like the place you were at and you move to a different area and you want to be able to go to continue with that same company, it can be very helpful for that. So with that being said, right now I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, but as everyone knows, we do not end these meetings. I'm just going to end the recording of the meeting. And unfortunately, I can't do that while I'm sharing. So I'm going to stop this share and then